Good morning, everybody. This is Patrick Hall with CancerBridge. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We're a couple minutes past the hour. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can ask them through the questions panel on the side of the Citrix interface. I'm joined today by Anna Beery, who is a dietitian here at the James Cancer Hospital in Columbus. She'll be actually doing the presentation. Candace Schreiber was scheduled to do the presentation but went into early labor. Mother and child are both doing great. But thanks to Anna for joining us today. So I'm going to spend a few minutes at the beginning of the webinar just talking about the CancerBridge service and the benefit that's provided to you by your employer. And then we'll transition over to Anna to talk about cancer and nutrition. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll spend some time answering any questions that you have. So again, please ask those questions through the questions panel in GoToWebinar. So first, just to talk briefly about CancerBridge. CancerBridge is a cancer-focused navigation service that provides you or your family with immediate one-on-one personalized access to a physician who is an expert in your specific type of cancer. And ultimately, we provide immediate expert guidance at a time of great uncertainty in your life. From the CancerBridge benefit, what you and your family receive is somebody who's knowledgeable about your specific cancer and will listen and answer your questions. And again, you get rapid access to an expert physician in your specific cancer, and will provide you greater understanding about your specific cancer, as well as guidance and next steps on avoiding mistakes as you navigate the cancer journey. And then again, providing immediate answers during a time of great crisis to your family. And when we talk about your family, generally, most companies are offering the benefit to you as an employee, and then typically to your parents, parents-in-law, spouse or partner, children, and siblings. And we advise you to check with your human resources team if you've got any specific questions there. But generally, those are the family members that are covered by the benefit. So it's not just you as an employee, and it's not just you if you're on the health plan of your employer. It's actually a benefit that's extended to all employees and their families, regardless of their enrollment in the health plan. So briefly, how does CancerBridge work? An oncology nurse immediately answers the call, triages the call, asks about where you're at in the cancer journey, what questions you have. Then that oncology nurse will schedule an appointment for you to speak to an oncologist about your specific concerns, and then that nurse will then follow up with you to see if you would like to speak to anybody else or see if you've got any additional questions. So all that happens within 24 business hours of your first call. And then if you've got any questions during the webinar, please ask them through the questions panel there in Citrix GoToWebinar. And then if you come up with any questions after the webinar, feel free to email them to us at questions@mycancerbridge.com, and we'll try to get them answered for you as fast as possible. So with that, we're going to pass the presentation over to Anna Beery, a clinical dietitian here at the James. And thanks to Anna for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to Patrick. Like he said, Candace Schreiber had her baby, so I am taking her place, so hopefully I can do as good of a job as she did. I work in radiation oncology, so my patients that I deal with are mostly going through current treatment. But the objectives of this presentation, we're going to be talking about healthy eating for cancer prevention and survivorship. We're going to understand why nutrition is important and its relationship to cancer. We're going to identify guidelines for cancer prevention and survivorship. We're going to talk about a plant-based diet and why this is important. And we're going to review ways to increase plant-based foods in your diet. So nutrition is important, very important. Studies have shown that about a third of all cancers can be prevented through lifestyle behaviors related to diet and exercise. Cancer survivors are at an even greater risk for developing other health conditions, many of which can be combated through diet and exercise. Nutrition impacts every function of our body, and optimizing our nutrition intake can help food work for us instead of against us. The cancer prevention and survivorship guidelines, we always go by the AICR, American Institute for Cancer Research, when we talk about anything nutrition and cancer-based. And this is the first organization to research the link between diet and cancer and translate it into information for the public. Recommendations drawn from comprehensive reports on cancer and diet and have been shown in about 7,000 studies, which have been reviewed and presented to expert panels. So they have come out with 10 different recommendations for cancer prevention, and these are all evidence-based. So the AICR's guidelines for cancer survivors. The first one is be as lean as possible without becoming underweight. Be physically active for at least 30 minutes every day. Avoid sugary drinks and limit consumption of energy-dense foods. These would be the foods that are high in added sugar, low in fiber, and high in fat. Eat more of a variety of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes such as beans, and limit consumption of red meats. These can be pork, beef, lamb, and avoid any processed meats. So if consumed at all, limit alcoholic drinks to 2 drinks a day for men and 1 drink a day for women. And limit consumption of salty foods and foods processed with sodium. Do not rely on supplements to protect against cancer. It is also best for mothers to breastfeed exclusively for up to 6 months and then add other liquids and foods. After treatment, cancer survivors should follow recommendations for cancer prevention. It's a little different during treatment, but these guidelines are all for cancer survivors. And then always remember not to smoke or chew tobacco. So the plant-based diet, what is this plant-based diet? This is a diet that emphasizes eating whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes such as beans, lentils, and peas, and nuts and seeds. Plant-based does not necessarily mean vegan or vegetarian, which I think is confusing for some people. So you're wanting to choose foods as close to their natural state as possible. And according to the AICR and their evidence-based studies, a diet filled with plant foods helps to lower cancer risk. So a plant-based diet is a diet that provides these essential nutrients the body needs to function, such as vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Plant-based foods are nutrient dense. Like we said, they're closest to their natural state. They do contain phytochemicals, which studies have shown may reduce risk of various diseases. These studies have shown that the plant-based diet can decrease your risk of cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. And the plant-based diet helps you maintain a healthy digestive system. And we talked about before that they do have fiber, so that really helps your digestive system. So these phytochemicals that we talked about are natural compounds that give their plants their bright color, their taste, their smell, and their texture. These help strengthen their plant's immune system, and then when we ingest them, they help strengthen our immune system as well. And several thousand phytochemicals have been identified. These have been studied for their abilities to decrease risk of cancer and other diseases. So some different phytochemicals that we see pretty frequently, these are the plant nutrients. One of them is carotenoids, which you will find in kind of like a bright orange fruit or vegetable like oranges, carrots, sweet potatoes. Lycopene is a phytochemical that is in tomatoes, Indoles is a phytochemical that you see in broccoli, cabbage, and turnips. Polyphenols you will see in red grapes, pears, and whole grains. Flavonoids you will find in berries, eggplants, and apples. So we really want you to get these nutrients from whole foods, not necessarily from supplements, and they are absorbed and digested better for us in whole foods versus supplements. The goal is to get 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day, and you know, the serving sizes are smaller than what we would think. So fruit serving size is 1 medium piece of fruit, like an apple, or a half a cup of fresh or frozen or canned fruit, and then only 1/4 of a cup of dried fruit. Those are all 1 serving. For a vegetable, the serving size for a raw vegetable is 1 cup, and for a cooked vegetable is 1/2 of a cup. So in this next slide, you can see what the plant-based diet is doing here. It's trying to change, your plate to look more colorful. There is a smaller amount of meat on the plate, and then adding whole grains, and we have 2 vegetables added to the plate in the picture. So for proteins in a plant-based diet, you can get protein from legumes, which are beans, peas, lentils, and peanuts. You can get protein from nuts and seeds. Whole grains you can get protein from, soy foods, fish, poultry, or low-fat dairy. If you're going to eat red meat, the AICR recommends no more than 18 ounces of red meat per week. And then avoiding processed meats that are cured or smoked, such as sausage, bacon, hot dogs, bratwurst, or deli meats. Try to eat a meat-free day at least 1 time a week. So when we are talking about whole grains, the whole grains that we want would be brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat bread or whole wheat pasta, barley, corn, oatmeal, or farro. Limit refined grains. So these grains are the ones that are enriched with flour. So white bread, white pastas, baked goods, and then snacks made with some enriched flour. So how to increase plant foods in your diet? We really want you to make half of your plate fruits or vegetables. Increase the amount of vegetables at dinner. So like that picture had, instead of just 1 vegetable, add 2 vegetables to your plate. When snacking, instead of choosing something like chips or pretzels or baked goods, choose fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Add beans and lentils to your meals instead of meat, which is easy to add, beans instead of meat to maybe a pasta dish or a salad. Eat a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables, and try new foods always. So in summary, we know that foods we eat can directly and indirectly impact our cancer risk. Increasing intake of fruits and vegetables, so at least 2 vegetables with each, or fruits with each meal. Eat mostly plants from their natural state. Eat whole grains, nuts and seeds, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, and then choose a variety of colorful foods.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Anna, for that very helpful information. We're getting a number of questions coming in, and we'll start to run through those. But again, if you have any questions, please send them to the questions box inside the webinar application. So the first question that we have is, would a energy-dense food include high-carb foods such as potato or rice, etc.? What did you mean by energy-dense food?
Energy-dense foods would be any kind of whole grain fruit or vegetable or protein food that has a lot of phytochemicals or nutrients in it, not necessarily rice or the potato. The potato would be okay, but something whole grain, more like the quinoa or farro, or something where you can get more phytochemicals than just from rice, which doesn't have a whole lot. It's not very dense. Same with the potato. You know, it's not very colorful. It doesn't have a lot of different phytochemicals in it, so we would prefer something more whole grain.
And then do energy drinks fall into the energy-dense foods category?
Energy drinks would not fall into that category. Energy as in nutrients, phytochemicals that we would be ingesting, not necessarily foods that would give us energy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. What can we drink besides water or skim milk as a healthy drink?
For drinks, we recommend, if you do drink something like juice, it's going to be a smaller portion size. So a fourth of a cup of juice is equivalent to a serving of fruit. Sometimes those juices have added sugar, so if you are going to drink something, it is best that it doesn't have any added sugar. But also things like smoothies, or even making your own juice at home too, not adding any extra sugar. You can drink, coffee, like it said, 1 drink of alcoholic beverage for women, 2 for men. That's about it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Is there any particular time of day to consume energy-dense foods? This particular person's day typically begins at 4 a.m. and winds up at 10 p.m. So is there any, in that spread of time, a good time to focus on an energy-dense food?
We want energy-dense foods throughout the day. So if you wake up at 4, it is a good idea to eat something, an hour after you wake up. So start your day then. It really is your nutrition throughout the whole day. So your body's not going to absorb it better in the morning versus at night, but we want you all day long to be eating these types of foods, making sure that you do eat something, an hour, no more than 2 hours after you wake up, to kind of get your metabolism going.
Okay. Kind of getting off the topic of the energy-dense foods, you spoke about a meat-free meal. Are you referring to avoiding red meat, or does that also include poultry, fish?
That would include poultry or fish as well. So trying, a dinner 1 night a week that you, instead of having any meat, that you choose beans or legumes like we talked about, or nuts or seeds for your protein source.
Okay, great. And then this is an interesting one, and you may not, it may be too early to answer this one, but are genetically modified crops proving out as cancer impacting?
That is a really good question, and GMOs are something that is actually pretty confusing and studied a lot. And I'm not sure of the studies. I think Candace would probably know better than I would about certain GMOs that are cancer causing. Some GMOs are added to foods for good reasons, and some are added maybe not so good. But maybe if they can send you that that question, and then I can get back to you.
Sure.
Okay.
I can follow up with Candace on that.
Yeah.
This one is around processed foods. Do processed foods contain a lot of preservatives and gluten, and are these tied to cancer in any way?
They're not necessarily tied to cancer, but normally processed foods have more sodium, not necessarily gluten, and there is not, a link between gluten and increased cancer risk, but it's more the sodium and just the process itself, and yeah, the preservatives mostly made up of that sodium.
Okay. You didn't really, and this is a good question, it's come up a couple times. Are there important distinctions to be made between organic and non-organic when thinking about a plant-based diet?
Not necessarily with phytochemicals. there isn't a huge difference. There isn't really any difference in the phytochemical of an organic versus not organic. You know, sometimes we've even heard that if preservatives are added to a food to make it, you know, making it not organic, it actually holds some of the nutrients even better than certain organic foods, but there are different studies there. And, you know, some foods, organic doesn't have as big of a benefit as, you know, like a banana, that the skin is pretty thick and it's, you know, any kind of pesticide or anything really doesn't kind of get into the banana. But
one of the questions revolves around dairy consumption. I don't think the presentation really touched on dairy too much. Are they a viable protein source on this plan, or should dairy be avoided?
Dairy does not need to be avoided based on the AICR guidelines. Low-fat dairy would be better for you, but they do not have any evidence-based studies that say, you know, no dairy at all, or that dairy has a risk, you know, increased risk for cancer.
Okay, great, thank you. I think this person's a meal planner and maybe doesn't like their vegetables. The question is it better to obtain all of those vegetables in one meal or to spread them throughout the day?
If you could get in, you know, a lot of vegetables in one meal, that would be fine. Like I said, it's kind of your all-day plan, so you need 5+ servings all day long. And if you can do that at one meal, then go for it. But, you know, I think it would be easier to kind of spread that throughout the day.
We're getting a lot of questions through here. Some of them are repeat questions, so I'm just trying to get through them. Do you have any thoughts on dairy milk versus soy milk?
So there are, I don't know my thoughts mean. You know, they both would be totally fine with this within the AICR guidelines. Mm-hmm. There's not really a restriction on either of them.
Okay, great. And a similar question. If somebody is on a reduced dairy diet and is drinking almond milk, how has the almond-based milk compared to lactate dairy-free milk?
Those milks are actually really similar. So the almond milk would be a great replacement for any kind of other, you know, regular milk or soy milk. They are all really similar, and yeah, that would be a great replacement.
Do you recommend any places to find recipes?
I'm trying to think what I can get back to you on that. I know that Candace has some that she really some websites that she uses, so I can get back if maybe we can get you to send that to Patrick's email. I can find out where Candace will get most of her plant-based recipes.
Okay, and maybe what we can do too, we're getting a ton of questions here, maybe what we can do too is send some resources out to everybody that had questions as well. Are there any, you talked about reducing deli meat consumption. Is there anything from the deli counter that you would recommend, like roast turkey or anything like that?
And you know, it's just kind of limit your processed food. So it is okay, but the turkey would have even less fat than some, you know, another kind of red meat. So turkey, and if it was low sodium especially, would probably be your best bet at the deli counter. Anything that has lower sodium or that is leaner would be good.
This question is from a lymphoma survivor. Are there any foods that are beneficial for improving red blood cell or hemoglobin levels?
And that is a great question that maybe we can get emailed to Patrick. We have a dietitian who works with lymphoma, so she would know better than I would about that. But I think there may be some studies out there that maybe we can get you the resource. before.
Okay, we'll follow up with that, the person who asked that question directly. Is there a difference between fresh, frozen, and canned vegetables?
So I would say frozen is closest to fresh. Canned, you can lose some of the nutrients. So I would say fresh first, frozen next, and then canned would be last. Although if canned is the only way that you're going to get those vegetables, and it's obviously a great choice too.
When it comes to red meat, are there any concerns around rare to well done in that spectrum? Should we be thinking about how far we cook meat?
Always, making sure you practice safely. So, bacteria can grow on any rare meat. So I would say cook it all the way through to the correct temperature. Make sure not to have rare meat anywhere on the counter without cleaning it first before you put something else down. So I would definitely say trying to avoid eating rare meat because of bacteria purposes.
What is your opinion about artificial sweeteners and their contribution to cancer?
I don't know if there are any studies about cancer risk. Everything in moderation. So if I have someone that is, using artificial sweeteners, I think it's okay, especially if you're using those versus having something that's really high in sugar. So on that aspect, I think it's okay, but everything in moderation. So, I would say kind of limit the artificial sweeteners per day, but one drink a day is okay.
Are there certain foods to avoid while having radiation treatment?
And this is actually my expertise, so it really depends on the person and where they're getting radiation. But really, no foods are off limits with radiation and interfering with that radiation. The biggest concern is just making sure these people are getting enough nutrition. So unless something is really, burning your mouth, for instance, if you have radiation to your head or neck, then I would say avoid that. But other than that, there's really nothing you should avoid during radiation.
Okay. This is a question from another meal planner. I exercise shortly after I wake up in the morning. What would be a good food to eat that's not hard to digest to get energy to assist in that workout early in the day?
So really any kind of, especially probably a fresh fruit or a whole grain that has carbohydrates, because the carbs are what will help you with that energy. Also paired with a protein food. So really kind of all of those foods would be great to incorporate early in the morning, either before, an hour before you work out, or even after you work out.
This is an interesting question. What role does fasting and/or intermittent fasting play in a cancer prevention diet?
I am not sure about any role that fasting would. We never, we want you to get enough nutrition, so I never recommend a patient to fast at all. But as for cancer, prevention, I'm not sure. So maybe that's something we can look into.
What about cooking oils? Do you see any differentiation there? Is one more important than the other, or one more recommended than the other? There's so many on the market these days. This person's asking about safflower versus almond versus olive.
The good oils, the monounsaturated, polyunsaturated oils, those are all, good for you, but there's not one that I would say is better. So any of those that you listed, those would all be a good choice. The only difference is when you're cooking. Some are better, some are milder when you're cooking, so you can't taste them as much versus, different foods. So as for the nutrients of them, they're really similar, but maybe changing them up when you're cooking just for the taste.
For variety. Good. What about a similar question? What about herbs? Are some better than others, and should any be avoided?
Herbs are wonderful, and there really are none that we would say don't eat. They all have probably different phytochemicals, but they're all good for you. So, again, it's kind of variety and taste, choosing different herbs based on the dish that you're making.
Okay, great. And then I think this will be our last question, unless any others come through. Does caffeine intake have an impact on cancer prevention or occurrence?
Patrick and I were talking about this a little bit. I don't know necessarily that there are any, caffeine that would decrease your cancer risk, but there have been studies about coffee decreasing your risk for, kind of other diseases, not necessarily cancer, but maybe diabetes and heart disease. So versus cancer-wise, I'm not sure that there are any good evidence-based studies right now.
Okay, good. I think we hit on most of the questions that are that have come through. We'll review those, and any that we missed, we'll try to get out a list of what the questions were and what the answers were, as well as some of the resources that were asked for. This webinar is also being recorded, so we'll distribute a link to that, as well as a copy of the slides for reference. So thanks again to Anna for the great time and information today, and thanks to all of you for attending. If any other questions come up after the webinar that you may have, you can ask them at questions@mycancerbridge.com. And again, contact your Human Resources Department if you've got any questions on how to access the CancerBridge benefit, or if you have any questions about which family members are eligible. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.